lovely Fei-Fan Balzer, and today I'm going to show you how your Brother ScanNCut, your Brother Embroidery Machine, and Simply Applique from Brother are going to combine to create an amazing team that will help you make a beautiful winter project. So this is an example of what we'll be making. You see that we cut the fabric with the ScanNCut, and then we're going to use Simply Applique to create the outline, design, and stitching, and then we'll use the embroidery machine to go ahead and embroider around here. I have a very sticky mat that has a high-tack fabric support sheet on it, and I have a piece of fabric which has fusible web on the back. That's really important, and I'm going to make sure to put it so that the pattern side is down and the fusible web side is up. To ensure that it really stays on, I'm going to use my Brother brayer to just go ahead and stick it on and just really make sure, because the key to cutting fabric accurately is that it's really well stuck down to the mat. So I'm going to use some pressure, put my weight into it. I go in multiple different directions to make sure that it's stuck down. Now you always want to store your brayer with the plastic side down, not the rubber side down, because it will actually flatten over time. So once that's done, I'm ready to go ahead and load my mat into the machine, and we can go ahead and pick the design that we want to cut. From the home screen, I'm going to choose pattern, and I want a winter design, so I'm going into over here, and there are a bunch of different snowflakes, so I'm going to go ahead and choose that snowflake right there. Now my hoop for my machine is a 4-inch hoop, so 3.94 is going to be really close. So I want to bring it down a little bit, just to be on the safe side with that 4-inch hoop, maybe even to 3 inches. Just absolutely make sure that it's going to fit perfectly in there, and I don't have to think about it. I don't know, I could probably live on the dangerous side and make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so then I'm going to say okay. Okay again. Set it, and now I want to scan in my fabric so that I can place that snowflake exactly where I want it. So I can see my fabric, and I can go ahead and place this on here. If I want to zoom in, I can do that, so I can really use up this tiny scrap completely and totally. So I might just move this a little bit. I might actually turn this a tiny bit just to get it to fill up. Now, if you had a nice big piece of fabric, you wouldn't have to mess around with it like this. It's just because one of the things I do love about the ScanNCut is the built-in scanner really does allow me to use it. This is just a leftover piece of fabric from another project. So I didn't have to get out my ironing board to put on the fusible web because I already had a piece of fabric that had fusible on it. So I like that. Okay, so this looks like it's on there. I'm a little worried about this tip. I might just move it up a tiny bit. Okay, it looks good. So I'm ready to say okay. Okay again. Now before I cut, I want to check my settings. Generally for fabric, you want to be down at a cut speed of 1 and a cut pressure of 4. And for my blade, I already did a test cut, but generally speaking, most blades, and it should be a fabric dedicated blade, is going to be around a 5. And the reason that I say a fabric dedicated blade, this is the same as any other blade. It looks exactly the same, but I wrote F on here, meaning I only cut fabric with this blade. Because if you cut paper and fabric with the same blade, it's going to stop working, because fabric and paper, well, paper just dulls scissors, and so it dulls any kind of blade. So I'm ready to hit OK and cut. Now, if you hadn't done a test cut, you should do a test cut now, but because I already did, I'm just going to press start. Now that we're finished cutting, I'm just going to unload this. So I like to pull the excess fabric away and then use my spatula tool. Now, because there's fusible on here, there shouldn't be a lot of fray. If you really wanted to make sure there was no fray, you could use a spray starch or something like that. But oh my gosh, look how cute that beautiful snowflake is cut out of fabric. And you saw how easy that was. And I just have some fusible on the back of that. Before we can leave the ScanNCut behind, there's one more step we need to do. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay. And now I want to go back And see this button that says save? I want to choose save. I'm going to save it to ScanNCut Canvas. And that's just going to wirelessly save it. So I'm ready to go ahead now and retrieve it. I'm here in ScanNCut Canvas, and I'm going to go to the My Projects tab. Now under this tab, I'm going to find all of my projects, including the snowflake that we just sent over. So I want to go ahead and click on the download button. Now it's going to allow me to choose where to download. I want to download it to my PC. And then I'm also even going to get to choose where I want to put it. And I'm just going to name it Snowflake and save it right to my desktop. So I'm going to say save. And now it has saved. So now I'm ready to open Simply Applique, which is a program that you can purchase from Brother for your PC. And I'm going to go ahead now and have a new canvas. You can see it opens with the grid lines. And then I want to import an FCM. That's the file that we just saved. Fabric cutting machine, fancy cutting machine, however you want to think of it. But here is Snowflake FCM. Let's open it. And you can see there's our snowflake right there, exactly at the size that we had it. Now, up at the top, you can see there are several different tabs: Home, Arrange, Tools, View, and each time you click on one of them, another menu opens. We're looking for Tools. And under Tools, you can see this choice right here that says Convert to Applique. If you click on that, boom, magically, you can see the stitching come up around the snowflake. Now, there's some options over here. You can do a satin stitch, which is what you see here. You can also do a blanket stitch. Now to see it, you have to hit apply. Oops, you have to hit apply. And then you'll see it could be a blanket stitch. So that will give it the look of hand stitching, which is a really cool thing. I like to do that especially with felt. Motif. This is the motif, and there are a bunch of different ones that you can choose from, whatever you'd like to choose. And you can adjust the size and all sorts of stuff. And again, you can apply to kind of preview. That for me starts to feel actually very kind of snowflakey. I like that a lot. And then our last choice here is run. And that's just going to be a running stitch. Once I hit apply, you'll see that. But I really like that you can sort of preview what's going to happen. I'm actually going to go with a motif, and I think I'm going to pick this first one. Let's take a peek at how it looks. I really like that. I think it's attractive, and it makes me really think kind of snowflakes. Those stitches feel very snowflakey. I'm kind of tempted by the blanket stitch, but I think I'm going to go with this one. Let's be a little crazy today. So now we need to go ahead and export this. I actually have a cable running from my PC into my sewing machine, and this is what is going to allow me to go ahead and download this directly to my sewing machine. But before we get there, let's take a look at the sewing machine. So this is my Brother sewing machine. It's actually an embroidery and sewing machine, but you'll notice that none of the embroidery functions are showing up. So the reason for that is actually right here. I need to slide this part of the machine off, and then I have this embroidery table which slides on instead, and now you can see the screen converting over and saying the carriage of the embroidery unit will move. I'm going to say okay, and now all of my embroidery options have come up on the screen. I do have embroidery thread threaded up here, embroidery thread in the bottom, and the embroidery foot on the machine. Now that we're all set up to go ahead and embroider, I want to go ahead and hoop my fabric. But before I can do that, we need to determine the size of the fabric. This is an inexpensive wooden embroidery hoop that I bought at the craft store. It comes in two parts. You simply loosen the screw and you can separate them out. So you put the smaller hoop underneath your fabric, and then you put the larger hoop over, and when you push down, you can see that it traps the fabric, and then all you have to do is just tighten the screw down. But we're not going to do that yet, because what we're doing is we're just trying to figure out some of the placement issues. So there's a snowflake that we cut. Now, there are a lot of different ways you could do this, right? You could put it in the middle, and you know, that would be enough. But what I actually want to do is I want to put it slightly towards the top because I think I want to add some text here. So I'm going to take a pair of scissors and I'm going to trim around this outside edge just so that I don't have all this excess fabric. Then I'm going to take a water-soluble pen and I'm going to go ahead and draw some of my placement lines. You'll notice I didn't actually trim it flush to this edge. There's still some hanging over, and that's really important because I'm going to need that fabric later. So I'm placing my snowflake on here, and then this is just a chalk pencil I decided to use. And I'm not tracing the whole thing. This is like just a very generic, general placement, and then sort of indicating that that's probably the center of it. So again, it doesn't matter if it goes exactly there, it's close enough. So it's somewhere around here, which would then mean that I want my text to go like maybe here and maybe a second line here. Okay, so you can see, I mean, this is not an exact science. I'm just sort of generally trying to get it right so that it will look great, no problem. So this is the hoop that came with my sewing machine. It's in 2 pieces, but the most important thing is that there are 2 arrows molded. And when you put the hoop together, the 2 arrows have to go towards each other. If you have this upside down, you'll see there's no arrow. If you have it the other way around, that's a notch and not an arrow. So arrows together. So I have the fabric that we decided, and I also have a piece of stabilizer. You always want to embroider with stabilizer. This is a tearaway stabilizer. If you're going to make a washable piece, you could make it be a water-soluble stabilizer. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to place this so that this square that we designated for our snowflake to go into is relatively in the middle of the hoop so that there's plenty of room to work. Then I'm going to take this smaller piece and push it down. I want this to be as tight as humanly possible. So then I'm going to go ahead now and tighten. Sometimes it helps to turn it sideways. Tighten that up. And now I have a little bit of a problem, which you are not going to do. You're not going to be bad like me. This fabric should extend all the way. This is actually hanging loose, and that's really not good at all. So make sure that your fabric is further over, please. Because what you want to do now is sort of gently pull at this so that it should be taut like a drum. Like you should be able to play this fabric. So you'll note that I fixed my problem, and now I'm such a good drummer. Okay, so let's head over to the embroidery machine. This little metal part is where this little metal part needs to go. So essentially, make sure that you get the hoop under the foot, and then these round parts go into the divots here. And then you want to make sure to push firmly until you hear it click. It's pretty easy, and it's you're pretty clear when it's in there and when it's not. Once I'm ready to export my design, I'm going to go up and I'm going to say save or save as, either way. And then, so USB F drive is actually what this cord is. It may be named something different on yours, but I know that that's the name of the cord. And then I want to choose how to export it, and I'm going to choose as a Brother PES version 5. Hit save, and it's going to come on over. So I'm going to choose on the embroidery machine, this one that has the PC with the link, and then we'll see it come over. So all I have to do is click on it and hit this little bring it in. Is this button that says adjust, and then it says layout. Now this button is basically going to allow me to see exactly where it's going to stitch. So if I click this, you can see that the machine moves to show me where it's going to stitch. And it looks like I guesstimated the placement of that box pretty darn well. If I want to make any adjustments to send it one way or the other, I can use these buttons to move it, you know, around. however I want. It won't let me mess up, so I go outside of the hoop. But once I'm satisfied with how it's arranged, then I'm going to be ready to embroider. Once I'm ready, I'm simply going to lower the foot. The button turns green, which means I can press go. So the machine automatically stops. It's amazing how it how it stitches that snowflake for you. This is perfect. Now we want to pull the hoop out of the machine. To remove the hoop, you want to raise the presser foot. The thread's already been automatically cut. And then you basically want to push under here. You'll see the hoop comes loose, and then carefully remove it so it comes out. And now we have our hoop, and we need to iron our applique into place. My fabric is still in my hoop. I have not unhooped it. Here is the piece that we cut, and it's so magical because it fits perfectly into those stitch lines. Once you've gotten it perfectly settled, I have a very small iron, and I am working on an ironing board or an ironing pad, and you're just going to take a moment to melt the fusible that's on the back of your fabric. Once it's adhered on there, we're ready to head back to our sewing machine. You're going to load in your hoop the exact same way that you did before. I want to skip number 2, which is what's highlighted now, and go straight to 3 because 2 is just another outline. So in order to do that, I'm going to click adjust, and then this minus or plus, and then where it says thread minus, thread plus, look what happens. Thread plus, it goes to 3. So that's what you want to hit. And now we're just going to do pattern number 3 on here, which is basically the actual embroidery. So once that's set, I'm going to drop my my presser foot. Okay, let's move this thread a little bit out of the way, press the green button, and the machine's automatically going to stitch that for me. It has finished sewing. So now we're going to go ahead and remove the hoop. We'll have to rehoop the fabric, create the text, and then go through this whole process again. So now I want to create my text. So I'm going to just go up to the shortcut for a new document, and you can see an extra tab comes up right here. It says Design 9. And then I'm going to go to Home, and you can see a menu of things come up, and I just want normal text. So I'm going to click on that, and a little cursor will appear, which I can click to add my text. So I want to add 2 lines of text. You, are, the second line is going to say unique. Just like a snowflake, you are unique. So now I have all these different fonts that I can choose from. Potpourri, Brandon, and again, I have to hit apply to see them. But you can see all sorts of different styles of text. I kind of like that Brandon. Steady script. Ooh, that's really pretty. I think I'm going to do the steady script. That's really pretty. And I can align it center, I can align it left, right, you know, however you want it to be. And again, until you hit apply, nothing actually happens. So the fill type, the pattern of how it's going to fill, you know, you can really get incredibly picky with how things are going to happen. So I'm just going to stick with satin. And that's what I like. Now, the only other thing I'm going to do is up here where it says hoop and it says show or hide the hoop. I find it a little bit easier to see the hoop so that I can see sort of how big things are in real life. You know, and I can decide whether I want this to actually be a little bit smaller or whether I like it being all the way big. Don't worry about the color or anything like that. We're just going to go ahead and choose our own color when we get to the machine. But I like it to really fill the hoop. If you wanted it to be tiny, again, you just have to drag the corners and you can make it any size that you want, but I'm going to make the text a little bit bigger. To export this file, I'm going to go up, save as, go ahead and save it as a PES version 5. You can make the name whatever you want, and then you just hit save. Then we can come on over to the sewing machine. But there's one other problem. It's going to be upside down. I want the text the other way. So let's fix that. Let's rotate 90. It turned it 180 automatically. That's why, because it wouldn't fit turned to regular 90. So it's just telling me that it did that. That's great. That's exactly what I want. So let's go back. And now let's once again make sure that the tracing is going exactly where we want it to be. So it's missing the snowflake, down in the hoop. That looks like it's going to be perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and change the thread color from yellow, and then we'll be ready to sew. So exciting! It's done! Okay, so I'm going to raise press foot, remove the hoop. At this point, I want to either, you have the choice, cut away or tear away the excess stabilizer. Depends how densely stitched it is. Sometimes it tears really easily. If it doesn't, that's what you got the scissors for. You also want to trim any excess threads, both on the back and on the front. Don't forget that connecting the letters, there'll be a thread that you want to trim. There may be some other little threads and places you want to rub the chalk off. And this is the hoop I had originally planned to put my work in, but then I decided there was just too much space and I wanted a smaller hoop. So you can change your mind at any time. So I'm just going to go ahead and put it in. The hardest part here is just going to be to center it, especially now because it's in the smaller hoop. So here it is. I just am going to trim the excess fabric and it'll be a really cute piece of wall decor. Thanks so much for watching. For more tips, tricks, and tutorials, be sure to visit my blog at balzerdesigns.typepad.com, and of course, don't forget about the ScanNCut website at ScanNCut.com.